We are live here from Circle Leadership Headquarters Studio at the home quarters. It's been a long time since I've done a live stream, so I'm really excited to be back online here and sharing with all of you something that has been coming up in a lot of conversations, and that is disruption. And I've been traveling for the first half of this year, done a lot of traveling throughout the United States and across Australia, speaking at events and talking about how AI is impacting organizations, and a simple core philosophy which is really fundamentally built on this simple clarism, and that is you can't take a new way of thinking and put it into your old way of doing and expect it to work. And so a lot of things are happening around organizations, and they're trying to put new things into their business without looking at their own organization and saying, well, how's this going to impact the organization? Is our organization ready for this? And AI has certainly highlighted that. There's a lot of hype around AI. Now, please understand, this session I want to share with you is not directly related to AI, but AI is one of the most disruptive technologies that's around today that is going to have a significant impact on a lot of businesses' roles in organizations. But this conversation has been coming up time and time again about disruption. So I thought, wouldn't it be great just to reflect back on what we believe is the disruption flow? I want to share with you how where disruption comes from and what happens with it, and then what happens after the disruption. So we've got a simple process flow that I want to take you through to hopefully open up your minds. And I share this with leaders when I'm speaking around the world that may be of benefit to you as you look at your own organization and how you can either choose to affect the disruption in your business and your industry, or be at the mercy of the effect of the change or disruption that's happened. We always have that choice. You can find a way to put yourself out of business, which is just putting your old way of doing business out of business, or wait for somebody else to come along and put you out of business, and you're potentially out of business. Please do not come crying to me when somebody else has come along and rubbed your nose in a future that you were destined to own, but you did nothing about it. So I want to share with you in here a simple disruption flow so you can understand how it all happens and what happens as the after effect of that, and how you might be able to leverage that flow in your own business. If you do have any comments or feedback as we go through this, please type it in the comments. I'm hoping they'll show up here on the side as I go through this off all the channels. But if I miss your comment, I will respond to it after the fact. Okay, so if you do want to make a comment, if you agree with what I've got to say, that's awesome. If you disagree, that's great. Tell me why. But let's get into it. Let's jump on the whiteboard here. And I want to share with you two core principles around disruption. Firstly is looking at this, what would have been the largest disruption to all businesses in the last 4 or 5 years. We were all trending along in, let's say, what we would call normal over here in normal. And then along came this thing called the pandemic. And the pandemic hit, and it obviously impacted every business around the world and families and livelihoods, you name it. And while this was happening, I kept hearing from people, oh, I just can't wait for it to get back to normal. I can't wait for it to get back to normal, for this to be over and it to be back to normal. But let me assure you that things were not going back to normal. That had changed the face of the way we live, work, everything significantly, the way we travel. So we weren't going back to normal. And then everyone was like, oh, well, then I can't wait to just get into this new normal and just get used to this new normal. And so everyone was hoping that this would be just a new normal and it would be like this now going forward. But it won't be like that, because something else will come along and create another disruption. So in this case, for example, we can go from pandemic here to, let's call it AI here. And all of a sudden AI's come along and created another disruption. And now it's disrupting all industries and businesses in terms of the way that we work. It's going to change the way that we live. It's going to change the way that we do everything. Whether you like AI or not, that's up to you. But the fact remains, it is a disruptive technology that is going to change the way that we look at things. And so that's come along. And then now people are going, oh, I just can't wait for this. So please understand that I have no idea what will be next, but there will be another disruption that will come along. And so we need to firstly get a handle on the fact that it's just going to be the next normal. Not going to go back to the way it was. It's not going to be a new normal. It's just going to be the next normal. It could be climate change next. It could be whatever it is, that something else is going to come along and disrupt everything again. So you have to accept the fact that disruption is going to be a normal part of life. We could look at change, and change, the most constant thing was change. Well, disruption is now change on steroids. So if you're not ready to embrace disruption or preparing yourself for disruption, you are going to get left behind. So I wanted to share that part first. The second part I want to share with you then is the disruption flow. So if we look at disruption, where does it come from? Where does it start? And so where it starts is here at the beginning, right here, with what I call interruption. Firstly, there is an interruption. An interruption happens. Now, what is an interruption? Well, an interruption is where somebody dares to ask what we would call an epic question, or a bunch of epic questions. Now, what is an epic question? It's a big, massive, you name it, large scale question that challenges the traditional norms of life and or business. So you got to start by asking epic questions to possibly create an interruption into what we would call the isness. And for those of you who know me well, one of my early clarisms was isness is the death of your business. Dave, you don't understand how it is in our business. You don't understand how it is in our industry. Well, the problem is that you understand how it is so much so that you can't see how it could be. But somebody else, if you don't choose to challenge the isness of your business, somebody else will come along and ask those epic questions and start to interrupt the way that we think about our business, the way that we work, live, do everything. All right. So then this interruption, what that does then is this leads us to the disruption. Now, the disruption is when somebody discovers, a discovery is made. And that discovery that is made is a new model. And so someone discovers something and then implements, let me just, for color coding purposes, make this look right. So there's a discovery. Because we ask these epic questions, and that leads us to a discovery. Then there's implementation of that new discovery. And what they're implementing is a new model. Okay. This discovery leads to an implementation of a new model. And what does that new model do? This new model here makes over here this old model obsolete. So all of a sudden, this new model has made the old model obsolete. And this is what's happening. You can look at this. All Uber did was create a new model that made the old personal way of transportation obsolete. Airbnb, Netflix, all these other organizations that come before and disrupted their industries, created new models that made the old model obsolete. They asked epic questions, created an interruption in the isness, discovered a new way, and then implemented that new model, and then made the old model obsolete. And that's what happens in disruption. But what's the next phase after that? Well, what that next phase is over here is then there is what we call an eruption. And what's the eruption about? Well, what it is that those people who started that disruption become trailblazers. Now, one of my other simple clarisms is fundamentally this, that trailblazers may end up with arrows in the back, but they get the trail named after them. Because what happens is there becomes a resistance to the new model, right? Whilst we've made the old model obsolete, there becomes a resistance. You look at all the stuff that Uber had to put up with from the taxi companies when they tried to introduce, when they actually introduced their new ride sharing. Okay, so there was tremendous resistance to the new model because those who hold on to the old model don't want things to change. It's challenging their isness of their business. So there's resistance to the new model. So the first eruption is an attack on the new model. But the second eruption is imitation. Now I'm just going to put one M, maybe two. Don't pick on my spelling here, please, people. All right. Then what it does is it creates imitation. And that's what happens. And now there's Lyft, Chauffeur, you name it, Didi, all these other rideshare apps have happened now. There's imitation follows. So now everybody wants to be the next Uber, the next Airbnb, the next Netflix. So as you go through this disruption flow, it all starts with asking epic questions. So what we want to do is get to the stage here where you start asking epic questions, which creates the interruption. That interruption interrupts the isness, which leads to discovery. That discovery is what creates the disruption. The implementation of that new discovery creates a new model that makes the old model obsolete. Then, of course, from there, the eruption happens as you become trailblazers in your new thing, the new model. You're going to get resistance from all those who you are impacting their business. And then once that you've passed that resistance, then imitation follows. And then everybody starts doing what your new model is. Now I could slide this across and go, then guess what's going to happen? Yep, there'll be another interruption. Somebody else will come ask a new question, because the one thing that we have found is those who have disrupted, who's going to disrupt the disruptors? So what's the next interruption that can happen after that? When you say, hey, I've disrupted, that's great. But remember, there's always going to be something else that comes along. So you need to be staying in the disruption flow and then get back to interruption. Okay, this is going to be the constant state of businesses as we move forward. So I just wanted to share with you this conversation and dialogue that I've been having around the world with business owners and leaders as I've been speaking at conferences and events. And, AI being the instigator of these conversations, but getting them to understand AI is just the next disruption, but there will be something else after that. Like I say, whether it's climate change or it could be something totally different to that. I mean, AI has been around for 60 years, but with the emergence of ChatGPT and all the large language learning models, we've humanized AI, and that's what the disruption has been. And now everyone's paying attention to the hype of AI, and there's arrows coming into the back of the AI creators. But I guess, and then all of a sudden now there's Claude and Perplexity and all these other imitations now of ChatGPT, because that's part of the disruption flow. So if you watch this, if you've been watching this, if you have any comments, I will answer them. Please, if you watch this, post the effect, put in your comments and I will get back to you on those. I would love to hear your take on this. What do you think about interruption leading to disruption, leading to eruption? And what would you think perhaps might be the next disruption that will come along, or the next interruption? And my question to you at the very end also is, are you going to lead the disruption in your own business and lead it in your industry, or are you going to wait for somebody else to come and do it for you?